Good afternoon. Thanks for stopping by. I'm glad you're here. Before we start on the subject matter for today, I'd like to introduce you to the channel and tell you a little about what I intend to do here. First of all, my name is Johnny Mercier, and this is my channel called The Hand of History. Briefly, if you're concerned about my attire, let me explain that for you. I don't even want to look like the people you've been listening to for the last 50 years. We are on the brink right now. The time that the scripture has told us is coming, what most people refer to as apocalypse, is at the door. We need to get serious. We need to understand the contents of this book so that we can understand what is before us and how appropriately to respond. I think that most people don't feel like they're on a journey, like they're going somewhere of their own choosing, but instead are being taken somewhere without being told the destination and are being carried along on the currents of something other than their own will, feeling unable to acquire solid footing and bewildered by being unable to make sense of their surroundings. The purpose of this channel is to provide you with a map, a compass, navigation tools, and to show you the road signs and to teach you how to read them so that you can chart your own course, navigate your own journey, and find your own way. Briefly, I plan to use the first 6 episodes on this channel to address several of the topics in the Revelation that people have been interested in and concerned about for the last 50 years. The fascination and worry about these topics has continued because folks are not getting satisfactory answers to their questions and concerns. I intend to use these topics to demonstrate that the Bible is a sensible and rational source that can be calmly and systematically researched to acquire satisfactory, responsible, and provable answers to our questions. And that while there is effort required, the task is not unmanageable. If we use the tools and the methods, the rules the Bible has laid out for itself, even our most difficult questions find satisfactory answers with proof, and we can achieve peace of mind. These first 6 to 10 episodes will serve as the footer for the foundation of our learning structure. Then, over the next 2 years or so, we will build a solid structure of method, practice, and knowledge by using the Bible as it was intended to be used, and using history, the works of other authors, newspapers, and documentaries as navigation devices to chart the courses of our own lives. After that, you will have the knowledge, the skills, and the wisdom to skillfully and confidently use the brain God gave you to understand the book that He gave you to chart the course of your own life in confidence, knowing that you and God are on the same page. Okay, let's get started. I chose the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse as the subject of my first installment for several reasons. First, it's interesting. Second, it's relevant and important, and it will be easy for you to follow, to understand, and to prove to your own satisfaction. I am a high school dropout who loves books, and I'm a career house painter. If I can do this, you can do this. So, without further delay, let's find out about these guys, the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. If you have a Bible handy, please turn to the Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible, and find chapter 6. If not, just sit tight and listen. But in the future, you should have a Bible and a notebook and a pen with you, so you can see that I am accurately quoting the text, and so then you can prove the validity of what I'm saying, as well as writing down any questions you might have. Okay, the Revelation, chapter 6, we're going to read verses 1 through 8. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder. One of the four beasts saying, "Come and see." And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow. And a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering, and to conquer. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, "Come and see." And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon, to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, "Come and see." And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, "A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine." And when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. Okay, calm down. The first thing you need to understand is these word pictures are called symbolic imagery. The things described here are not things that you do or ever will see. They are pictures intended to symbolize things that the visionary had no way of knowing or being able to identify or to understand, because these things did not exist at the time John was writing. They are not otherworldly beings who came riding up out of the lower regions of hell through the mouth of a cave in the Carpathian Mountains, or some such nonsense. These word pictures describe real events taking place in the context of reality, producing natural results in the natural realm, and they describe human agencies operating here on this little planet called reality. So who are they? The horses represent the vehicles of war, mainly because they were the vehicles of war at the time John was writing. The first horse is Adolf Hitler's Third Reich. Why is it a white horse? It's a Caucasian thing. The first and primary objective of the Third Reich was to engineer a master race of blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white people who would dominate and rule the world, with everyone else serving as their slaves. This was Hitler's first objective, even ahead of the so-called final solution, the Holocaust of the Jews. The white horse's rider had a bow, which is an instrument of war, in his hand, and he went forth conquering and to conquer, which a 7th grade world history book will tell you is exactly what Hitler was about. The red horse is the Empire of Japan. This horse is red because Japan's flag was a big red ball just left of center with red beams emanating out to the four edges of the flag over a field of white. It represented the rising sun of the Orient. Also, red is the most highly favored color of the Japanese people. And I don't know why that is true, but it is. The red horse's rider was given a great sword and had power to take peace from the earth. This is the honored and revered ninja warrior, whose honored, revered, and worshipped weapon was his sword. You will also remember from your 7th grade history class that Japan ended their war by surrendering a sword. Japan's entering the war and adopting the Nazi-fascist form of militarism made this truly a world war, taking peace from the earth. The black horse is communist Russia. The horse is colored black so that you may identify exactly whom you are looking at. During the Russian Revolution, the Russian people were divided into two groups. The Tsarists were known as the White Russians, and the Bolsheviks, later to be known as the Communists, were called the Black Russians. The White Russians were long gone by the time of World War II. It was Communist Russia, the Black Russians under Joe Stalin, that was engaged in World War II. The black horse's rider had a pair of balances in his hand. So, what's up with that? There were 7 primary players in World War II. France, England, and the United States made up the Allies. Germany, Italy, and Japan made up the Axis. And Russia was neither. Russia stood both physically and diplomatically between the two. Russia stood physically at the apex between the powers of the East and the powers of the West, with Japan being the extreme of the East and the United States being the extreme of the West. Diplomatically, Russia made terms, agreements, and pacts with both sides, and the activities and tide of the war teetered in the balance according to which direction Russia turned its attention. If you look, Moscow is located right here. The physical extreme of the east was Japan, and Tokyo is located right here. The physical extreme of the west is the United States, and Washington is located right here. And you can see graphically here that even visually, the instruction of the scripture is plainly accurate. Russia did indeed hold the balance in its hand according to every valid definition of the term. Russia was key to both the beginning and the end of Germany's war machine. Hitler could not have attacked Czechoslovakia without Stalin agreeing to stay out of it. And of course, Russia made the final assault on Berlin and was the first signatory to Germany's terms of surrender. The tide and activities of the war teetered in the balance according to which direction Russia turned its attention. The pale-colored horse. Zechariah called this one the bay-colored horse, which is probably a better term because it actually describes what this color looks like. Bay is the color you would get if you mixed taupe and an ashen sort of gray together. Kind of a sickly looking color. And don't bother going to the art store or the paint store because nobody's fan deck has this color in it. It is not a color anyone would choose. It's ugly. It is the color of sickness, infirmity, and death. It is the lifeless color of poverty. You'll notice that this horseman has nothing in his hand. Because while these horsemen and their weapons are described within the context of World War II, this horseman required the name given here, death, after the war. And the effects of this horseman's gallop over the face of the earth followed or came after the historical context of the war. Let me call your attention to the fact that these horses describe empires and their riders describe those empires' political leaders in the context of the war. This horse and its rider do not describe the empire, its people, or its political leadership during the war. It describes what this empire became following the war. The bay-colored horse describes what the Empire of the United States and its political, military, and economic leaders became following World War II, right up to the present day. This horse's rider was given the name Death following the deployment of the hydrogen and plutonium bombs known as Fat Man and Little Boy to Nagasaki and Hiroshima, Japan, wherein collectively some 225,000 people were instantly vaporized. Roughly 4 square miles, or about 80% of each city, were instantly leveled, and thousands retained injuries that would endure for the rest of their lives. Many were made sick with radiation poisoning and eventually died, and birth defects affected hundreds of children who were born in the years following. By the way, the names Fat Man and Little Boy both effectively describe the person of Harry Truman, whom described himself as a four-eyed little sissy kid. He got beat up a lot when he was in school. And he was instantly thrust into the role of a fat man as the President of the United States upon Franklin Roosevelt's death. His most famous quote is, "Walk softly and carry a big stick." Well, the sissy, little boy half of his alter ego walks softly. The fat man half of his alter ego dropped nuclear bombs on civilian, non-combatant population centers. That really is a pretty big stick. Whereupon another of Truman's quotes is appropriate, and that being, "The buck stops here." Oh yes, I did say the name Death was given after the war. So am I contradicting myself? Not at all. In the eyes of any rational person, and indeed in the eyes of God, Japan's war was over. The bombs were dropped in August of 1945, but Japan had been suing for peace since May, 3 months earlier. All of you have heard people say that the dropping of the bombs effectively ended the war in the Pacific, potentially saving millions of young American servicemen's lives. My response is nonsense. The only part of Japan's war that was not over was the signing of surrender terms. Their military machine was half broken. Their navy was destroyed. Their industrial centers had been decimated by 40,000 tons of bombs. American forces were occupying several Japanese cities, and the morale and the will of the Japanese people was broken. The only reason the war did not end between May and August is because Harry Truman demanded unconditional terms of surrender to include the unseating of their emperor, whom was also a holy figure to them and the focal point of their religion. This was the same thing to them as the demand that you revoke the authority of Jesus in your life would be. They could not agree to these terms, and so were holding out in hope of the arrival of the Russians, believing they would make more agreeable terms. Russia did not show up until the first bomb had been dropped, and the second bomb was dropped before Japan could make terms with Russia. Now get this. Terms of surrender following the bombings were accepted by the Americans without Japan unseating the emperor. The emperor remained in his position until he resigned it many months after the armies had all gone home. Conclusion? Truman insisted on terms of surrender that Japan could not agree to because he was determined to drop the bombs that he had demanded the completed production of. And that is all there is to it. By the way, ending the war in May would also have saved 500,000 American lives. Not to put too fine a point on it. Now, that wasn't such a long walk, was it? I hope this has been interesting and informative for you. If so, please click the subscribe button and ring the bell so you'll be notified when the next episode is online. Also, I'll be very grateful if you will share this channel with your friends and family and share your comments or questions in the box right down there. I know this went kind of long, and I'm so grateful that you stuck around. Please come back next time. I'm looking forward to our next visit. For now, keep your eyes on the prize. I'm Johnny. Bye. Have a great week.